Hello there, and welcome to Preprints in Motion, a podcast taking a deep dive in the fast-paced world of preprints.
Join us as we sit down with early career researchers, discuss their latest preprint, and find out about their journey through the muddy marshes of academia.
Hit that subscribe button, leave a rating, and find us on Twitter at MotionPod. Support us by heading over to buymeacoffee.com/preprints. But for now, let's get into the show.
And today we have Megan from Arcadia Science talking all about their brilliant and ever-evolving publishing experiment. So thank you for joining me. We had Pratch on what feels like ages ago now, so we might do a bit of a refresher on Arcadia a bit more broadly as well. But I think if I remember correctly, when we had Pratch on, Arcadia was still like really new, and I mean it's still really exciting, but it was new and exciting. It was the shiny thing. Whereas now, obviously, you've been going for 3.
Yeah, I think so. About the
length of a PhD in the UK. So you've had one whole PhD finish, and this is why I kind of wanted to check in with Arcadia again, because you've been doing some really cool stuff with the publishing experiment that you've been running. You've been doing some updates to it. You've changed it a little bit. So it feels like now's a good time to kind of go over that side of things properly. So why don't we start there? Actually, why don't we start with just a brief refresher on what Arcadia is as a company, and also your role, Megan, in Arcadia.
Sure. Yeah, so Arcadia is a startup biotech company in Emeryville, California. So it's on the east side of the Bay Area. And we're largely looking to harness the power of evolution to develop therapeutics for human health. And we're sort of in an interesting position where we span kind of what's thought as more traditional fundamental academic work and into more traditionally industry work. So we'll do some kind of basic research and tool development, but then we'll also follow all the way through into like preclinical testing, which is more like industry work. So we're sort of spanning what's thought of as the valley of death in some ways, where you have some idea and try to take it out into the world, and it kind of dies because it isn't scalable, or it's just hard to do that transition, that sort of thing. So we span that whole process. And I guess just to give like an example of the type of things we're doing. So one of our most advanced translational types of projects, I'd say, is looking at ticks and trying to figure out how it is that ticks bite us and aren't detected for days or even a week maybe, even though they're feeding for a really long time and people don't even feel them. And it's because ticks have stuff in their saliva that's manipulating our immune system and nervous system and preventing us from feeling them. And so we're trying to figure out what are those molecules in the tick saliva, because you can imagine those might be really useful as therapeutics to be anti-inflammatory, anti-itch, that kind of thing. So broadly looking to see what has nature already sort of done for us, and how can we build tools to kind of rationally mine all of that information and turn it into products that help people.
Yeah, a lot of the scientists you have seem to have really weird niches. You must be excellent at finding these people with these strange but really useful interests.
Yeah, we have a good cast of characters here. People that are coming from all different sorts of backgrounds, have a lot of wide-ranging expertise, but are all united around our mission. And I guess you asked me to mention this too. So like my role in Arcadia is on the publishing side. And I'll say that everyone that joins here has to be game for a lot of experimentation, not just in the lab, but in our whole company. So we're really trying to figure out how to do science in fundamentally different ways, to figure out what actually works better, what really sparks creativity. And one of the ways that we're trying to do things differently is on the publishing side. So I'm the director of publishing. I work with Prachi very closely and my team to figure out how we can share our research in ways that are going to benefit us as a company and also benefit the broader scientific community. So we're really trying to figure out how to do it better. We've done the system, we've used the system that we have for quite a long time. The journal system is broken in many ways. There's a lot of discussion of this always, of how we can make things better. And for us, it's like, I think the best system would be just a lighter weight, more frequent and open sharing system. So instead of squirreling away and like doing your work in secret for years and then taking months and months to put it out there. Just often communicating what you're doing in a way that's still rigorous and documented and everything and reproducible, but just having lighter weight, quicker updates. So that's sort of the gist of what we're going for.
And it's one of the few, I would say, genuine experiments to do something better and different. Because I was saying earlier, right, it's usually me who gets it edited out. One of the things I'm currently complaining a lot about is that it feels like a lot of the discussions in the open science space they've just come back around again. It's all very circular and a bit boring if you're involved in those discussions. That's definitely has to be removed. But a lot of the current efforts don't feel like they're actually that adventurous. They kind of, you look at Publish Review Curate, publish my current bugbear. It's just the system we have. We're kind of doing it now. It carries all the problems over with it. And I just, maybe it's me. I don't get it. So it's nice to see that kind of refreshing take on it. Do you think, so you said that Arcadia as a company is kind of doing something a bit different compared to the sort of traditional biotech industry would be. Do you think that helps with also running that publishing experiment, that the whole organization is different in just like every possible way? Does that mean the people who are being recruited as scientists are more on board with the publishing stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I think we definitely select for a certain type of person who's open to trying new things and not dissatisfied with the system in a way that's just like being jaded, but is really kind of bucking against that system in their prior roles and has been trying to do new things and pushing the boundaries and just hasn't had the opportunity necessarily to, go full-fledged with it. Maybe I can cut what I'm saying right now, edit that part out. But I think we do select for people that want to be creative and just need a home that supports them being able to explore and try things in sort of a different idiosyncratic sort of way. And I think that extends to publishing. Like we've definitely hired people, especially recently, who are just like totally over the prior systems and have been able to demonstrate to us ways that they had been trying to push beyond it where they were before, but it's not going to be embraced in other places. And so here we totally embrace it. Like we love that. So it's been fun. It's definitely a fun role for me because I get to work with all these people that are really game to try new things. And I think maybe I would love to talk later about these notebook pubs that we're developing. And I think that's a really cool example of this because it's one of our scientists who came up with this idea, who really wanted to do it and made it happen on his own. So we have a lot of great people here. And, like you were saying, it can be frustrating in the traditional world trying to make these like small little tweaks at a time while you're building towards like a much bigger change. And we're just really lucky at Arcadia that we have a lot of funding, buy-in across the company, and just like a ton of freedom. We really can do more bold experimentation because we're not locked into these traditional systems.
So maybe before I get too far ahead with questions in that sense, maybe we should talk about what the publishing experiment actually is. So could you just give a bit of an overview of what it is that you're doing that's different and maybe the thinking behind that approach over others?
So our goal, as I said, is to find new ways to share our research that maximizes the benefit for both us and the broader scientific community. And so we've chosen not to publish in journals. We don't even use preprint servers, although we love preprints. But we really wanted much more freedom to explore how to share our work. Even preprint servers lock you into certain things. So we use an independent platform called PubPub. It's not like a proprietary platform. Anyone can use PubPub. And we try to share our science as soon as we think it could be useful to someone or useful to us to get feedback on it. So similar to preprinting, we don't wait for peer review. We try to release things quickly and then let people make public comments on pubs. So if you go to our publishing website right now, you can read about our science and make whatever comments you want. If you want to give us feedback or point out errors or anything like that, we love any kind of feedback, and honestly would love more critical, harsh feedback in some cases. I think people, are afraid to say some of that stuff publicly, but we really encourage a totally open discourse as long as it's respectful. So it's more of like a post-publication review model. And it's important that we're still tied to the publishing ecosystem. So that's one of the things that's kind of nice about PubPub is that we're still able to make DOIs for pubs. We're indexed on Google and in Google Scholar, so people can find us. We can cite other people's works. They can cite us, that sort of thing. So I guess another tenet of what we're doing is to be fully reproducible. We try to include like anything you might need to reproduce the work or build upon the work. So like code is always fully available and internally code reviewed to make sure it really runs on someone else's machine. We never say data not shown or data available upon request. Like we always share the data. We use protocols.io to share protocols. So we try to make sure we're really doing a good job of including all of the material that you really need in order to benefit from someone's research. And then maybe the last point I'll make about our system is that we, in addition to trying to share small units and share them more often, we also share things that are just types of content that people don't normally publish. In part, either because they're small or because it's like negative data. We'll always share negative results. We might have like just small observations or ideas for things that we don't necessarily even pursue, but we want to put out there. We'll do questions to the community. And then we have a cool thing called Icebox, where we share projects that we've started but abandoned. And you can look at our Icebox right now if you're interested. Our publishing website is research.arcadiascience.com. And you can see we always share the reason why we stopped doing something. So we're not just like handing off some horrible project without explaining, but sometimes we stop things just because it's not the right thing for us, not because it's a terrible idea. And so it's a great place to find new ideas for projects to potentially pursue. And we've done a fair bit of handing off materials on projects from Icebox so other people can kind of take them and run with them. So yeah, in summary, I guess I'd say we're just trying to figure out how can we be useful to people? How can we share things in a way that accomplishes the goals that we're going for rather than just adhering to traditions or norms?
So you said you hand material off. Do you collaborate with people or do you just say, we've done our bit, we'll give you whatever you want to help you and kind of leave it to others to just run with the ideas?
It's more the latter. So we do less collaboration and more, trying to provide whatever somebody needs, but, they can always make a comment on the pub. We'll always answer it if they have more questions. And we're starting right now, I think, to maybe start to do a little bit more of like deliberate collaboration, but that's pretty nascent and not yet connected to the publishing experiment. So I won't get into that.
Yeah, there's something I'd like to see academic labs do more of. Just give up the ideas they don't want to continue working on for whatever reason. Just let someone else do it, rather than stick them in that drawer that they never open again.
Right.
And with you touched on the commenting function as well. This came up this week. I was talking about a lot last week. Sorry, with people because there was an article about preprints and how nobody uses the commenting function. Your pubs do actually get comments, and when I last looked, they had quite a lot of comments. So people are engaging and they are providing. Maybe it's not the harsh feedback you really want, but they are providing feedback. Mm-hmm. How do you find that process to work? Do you have to go out and get people to provide that feedback, or is it just you've got a nice solid base of people who are just doing it out of the goodness of their hearts?
Yeah, so we made a change in our approach to commenting recently that has resulted in many, many more comments, which is that we ask job applicants to leave a comment on a pub as part of their application. And this has been really, really helpful because, one, we get way more feedback on our work because people are, incentivized to give it. And we've had comments from people that are like really, really useful. It's not just like, oh, wow, great experiment, give me a job. We've gotten real engagement from people who have like applied our tools and pasted like figures and whole analyses and stuff into their comments. So it's really useful in that sense. And then it has this other benefit of being really useful in discerning whether candidates are appropriate for a role. So we've gotten really good feedback for hiring managers to go on. Because it's like, this is like an audition for what it would be like to work with this person as a colleague. So we've seen a ton more comments on pubs as a result of that. We still get organic comments as well, but the majority now are from job applicants. And I do think should look. I'm not sure if I would be curious to see if job applicant comments being there sort of encourages organic comments to happen more too, because people see that there's like an open discussion happening. I should look and see if we can figure that out in our data. But yeah, that's why we have a lot more now.
Yeah, we find that with the crowd review program we do. It's once someone's added comments, more people will then do it. But that getting the first person to do it is a bit tricky. That's a really clever way of going about it. I would imagine somewhere like Arcadia is hiring people who are the good kind of troublemakers, so they will leave good, hefty comments rather than just, I would like a job, so I'm going to be really nice.
Yes.
So one of the questions I think I get asked a lot when talking about this kind of experiment with people who are not that familiar with it, and because I talk to a lot of people in academia still, is how this sort of translates to academia. Because obviously this is an experiment that is outside of the academic system. People are slowly, I think, coming around to the notion that you can leave academia and come back if you want to, rather than just being a one-way thing. Have you had anyone from Arcadia go back into academia so far?
We have had maybe 1 or 2 instances of that. It's I'm not totally sure. We haven't been around for that long. As you said, it's like maybe a little over 3 years. And it's not, it's a path less traveled to go from industry to academia. I think we have had a couple instances. And I think I can imagine, I don't know what their hiring process was like, but I can imagine that it would be useful to be able to point to work that you've been doing for the past couple of years. Whereas if you're coming from another company, you might not be able to talk about your work at all. I have friends that are like totally tight-lipped about what they're doing, and it's just very strange. So being able to talk about your work and not just like say that you've done something, but show it, I think is a great way to be considered for a job. Like whenever I talk to people about careers in science communication, I always say like, have a portfolio website, show what you can do, because anyone can write that they're good at XYZ. But when you see the product, that's when you really know what someone can do. So I would imagine it would be really helpful going from Arcadia to any role, because the people considering you can really get a sense of what you're capable of, and you're able to talk freely about it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask. We had during our PhD, we had one of my friends who was in our lab meetings. His PhD was part funded by industry, and he wasn't allowed to talk about the stuff he was working on in the lab meetings. And
Wow.
one of my supervisors really took him to town on that and went quite hard in on it, because, it's kind of ridiculous when you're trying to explain something, but you can't explain the key, really important bits, and
Right.
why even bother to try in the first place?
Yeah, totally. I know. I see sometimes I'll talk to an acquaintance or something, and they'll be like, well, I'm working on, and then they'll just like clam up. And I'm just like, what am I going to do with this information? I don't know what little molecule you care about. Like, I'm just trying to talk to you.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be terrible. I can't keep secrets. I'd be terrible. I'd tell everyone as soon as someone told me. So this has been going on, and it has been updated and iterated on. What are some of the key differences from sort of version 1 of this publishing experiment to, I guess, version 2 now?
Yeah. So when we first started this, we started it from scratch. So I got hired at Arcadia and learned what PubPub was, and met a couple scientists that had research that they wanted to put out into the world yesterday. And so we were just sort of frantically putting it together, and I was working really, really closely with each scientist, learning the platform myself. It wasn't something they could just jump on necessarily. And so we ended up developing a system that was kind of like hand-holding and bureaucratic. It grew to that because of its origins, I would say. And so we did a ton of project management and tracking of every little task, and really trying to keep them going quickly and sharing things expediently and all of that. And ultimately it started to become just excessive and not necessary to do all of this, or it felt necessary. It felt like, oh, they're never going to release anything. Oh, the quality is going to be terrible if we're not in there with them, my team, publishing team, in there with them. So, but we realized that it was just kind of tamping down creativity and taking a lot of effort and kind of making it more miserable than it needed to be. And so we decided to take a radically different approach and restore the scientist's agency in the process, and see okay, if we give you the opportunity to lead this yourself, now that we've kind of worked out how it works and you don't need so much hand-holding, what does it look like? And so we call everything before that moment V1, and then this new version we're still calling V2. I don't know what V3 will be. That will be interesting. But this is V2, and so we really stripped back a ton of our requirements and bureaucracy and stuff. And now the scientists really are much more in charge of what they do. Like, no one's hounding them to get something out. And what we found is that they're still sharing. So they're still sharing. They're still doing a good job. We haven't seen, it's hard to measure something like quality, but we haven't seen any like big issues where something was missing, or, we try to do like reading scores and stuff to make sure writing is accessible. We haven't seen big changes there. Like, it seems like they really, I can tell they really can do this themselves. And we've switched more to a model of like help on demand. So our publishing team has a menu of services that we offer. And when a scientist thinks they want that or that they need that, they just ask for it and they get it. So instead of us applying this sort of one size fits all thing to everyone, we can help the people that really need it. We can let the people that want to do this totally independently and just do it. And then we are also there to support when people have like more radical ideas or want to do something really interesting where it might just need more technical support. Like right now, we have a pub in progress where the team wants to share, I think it's like 17 videos and like 23 interactive figures or something all in one pub. So that's going to take some more technical work from us. But it's really driven by them. Like, they're the ones that want to put that work into it, and that's how they want to share their work. So we're supporting it. So it's been really great. The V2 it's like much more relaxing on my end. I think it's let people be more creative and take a lot more ownership over what they're doing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if you do get more creative pubs out of that, actually. With academia, it's kind of you have the PI who makes a decision about when to publish, where to publish. It's all very fixed. And if there's any training at all, it'll come from the PI. It's like sort of medieval training system still. I don't know why that hasn't been updated for places of learning. How does that work at Arcadia? Because obviously a lot of your scientists might be people who are out of PhDs or postdoc in the academic world levels who are not used to necessarily making these kind of decisions. So how's that change been from sort of effectively someone else being that to allowing them to figure out when to share and how to share?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it definitely takes some getting used to sharing this way. Even though I mentioned we're selecting for people that are interested in doing it and kind of breaking free of norms, it still does take some adjustment. So we very often see that like someone's first pub at Arcadia is almost like the same as a traditional paper, like really long, tons of figures. There's some perfectionism and procrastination mixed in, but we are trying to encourage, I think it's fine for your first pub to be that way, but we try to encourage from the outset for people to take a mindset of like, okay, what's the first thing you think you might be able to share? What's like the smallest possible thing? And we've even lately been trying to say like, maybe even in your first 90 days here, you should be able to have a pub out or at least like far along or developed. That's our sort of onboarding windows, 90 days. So we are trying to do that. And we do now have like a pretty good management structure in place. I think this is part of what's enabled V2 to be successful, is that we have teams that are organized pretty logically and managers that are on top of it and able to guide those that report to them through the publishing process and to really help and get in there with their pubs. Like, that's a big part of management at Arcadia, is helping with pubs. So I think everything has sort of come together to let us make this be part of our cultural system at Arcadia. Like, I would say probably last year is when I felt like this is now just the norm for everybody. Like, it's pretty ingrained. People come up to me and they're like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about a pub about this. Whereas in the beginning, it would be me saying, hey, do you have anything you might want to publish? So I think it is the cultural norm here. And so when new people come, it's becoming like a little bit easier and easier over time for them to just adapt and see that everyone around them is doing something this way and kind of get on board with it.
Yeah, which is really great for like 3 years in to already have that as the norm.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Scientists don't change their minds and behaviors easily, as I also complain about regularly. So this is probably a good point to introduce the notebook pubs, which are a new thing again. So could you talk about where they came, well, what they are, and sort of where that came from?
So notebook pubs are similar to like an executable notebook or executable paper. People may have heard of this idea kind of going around for a while. But in our case, it was sort of born out of one of our scientists, Evan, noticing that a lot of the work that a whole bunch of them were doing was being done in Jupyter notebooks. So they're like kind of writing and doing code at the same time and walking through what they're doing and their analysis. And then when it comes time to publish, they're taking those notebooks, putting them in, GitHub repos, writing a whole README about it, then writing everything up into a separate pub, describing it, linking out to the repo. And it's sort of like recreating the entire piece just in a different way, and in a less reproducible way. And so he got interested in sharing just the notebook itself as the product. So notebook pubs are just literally, Jupyter notebooks that we've attached some of the like bells and whistles of publishing on top of. So we link them to having DOIs, or I guess I should say that differently. We can't currently host them directly on PubPub. So we make a stub, like a notebook stub on PubPub that has the DOI and links to the notebook, and has all the information on how to cite it and authors and everything. Eventually, we would love to host them directly on PubPub and not have that little intermediate step. But they're just like papers, but they have code in them. And you can see directly how each figure was made, like the notebook itself. The code makes the notebook itself. So it's all very easy to copy and work with and build off of. And everything's completely reproducible because like the product is from the code. So it's an interesting way of doing things, and it's really cutting out just like a ton of extra work for people, so they can really, really quickly have an idea, start working on it the way they normally would in a notebook, and then maybe clean it up a little to publish it so it's still useful to someone, but then put it out there directly. So we have an example coming up where I think it's going to be like 10 work days between some of our scientists reading this preprint in like a journal club and then thinking, oh, I have an idea for like how to modify this method in some way. Let's do it and then release it as a pub. So super, super tight turnarounds, which is great, especially for, I think this is like an LLM related thing. So if you're in a fast moving field like AI for biology, it makes sense to be able to just be cranking stuff out and engaging with the community, showing variations on tooling, getting feedback, that kind of thing, instead of waiting around for months and months and months and releasing something that's just completely antiquated and out of date by the time it comes out.
And being out of academia, you can actually really experiment with this because there's a couple of, I guess, somewhat similar attempts, but they're so tied to academia that they're quite, from my perspective, they're quite restrictive in how they're going about it. It doesn't feel like it's something that's ever going to take off wide scale, whereas you could actually get it to that point. When you're doing these kind of things with the experiment, is this something you're doing to just experiment and have fun and sort of benefit Arcadia, or is this something you're doing with the mindset of this is our vision for change more broadly, and we would like at some point to translate this back into academia, which is really difficult to change? And if that is the thinking behind all this, then do you have any plans on engaging back that other direction?
Good question. Yeah, I think we primarily are trying to figure out how this can work for us first. Like, I think one of the advantages we have of doing this compared to like anyone else trying to do it, if you're in academia or even other company, I'll say just in academia, is that, we can actually do the experiments with our own content and data. So often people are like trying to, set up a website to do some new kind of publishing, but they have to recruit people to it. They don't have science to put out there. So we can run like an internal experiment basically and really refine things around ourselves first. And I think even though, this functioning for us is ultimately what we have to do. We're a company. We have to like justify doing this and make money at the end of the day. I think the vision is that anything we learn can hopefully be mimicked by others and reproduced. So we do put a lot of effort into kind of like documenting what we're doing and thinking about how it can be extended. I don't think we're quite at the point of wanting to go out and like evangelize and try to get other people to do exactly what we're doing, but we do try to encourage people to sort of take similar, operate on similar principles as us and take some of our learnings and apply them within the structures that they're sort of confined to. And also think about how much they really are confined to those structures. Like, to me, it's like, don't let tradition stop you from being effective in what you're doing. Like, what is the actual goal in publishing something that you have? Think about that goal. And if you had no constraints, how would you accomplish it? I'm sure it's not the traditional system. So what can you do knowing that you do have constraints that will still help you do a little bit better towards getting towards that goal? So I definitely encourage people on that front all the time. And I can talk more about things I think people could do differently, even without mimicking our system. But I do think ultimately it would be great for people to copy what we're doing. I've talked to a couple people who have tried using PubPub because we're using it and have released their own work that way. And I think, part of why we chose the platform is because we want other people to be able to use it. We don't want to create something that only works for us.
The other thing that I just wanted to mention, because you mentioned it as well, is that Arcadia runs these preprint journal clubs, and you leave public reviews on preprints. Something I've been trying to get people to do for years. Wherever I've worked in a place, I've just been completely ignored. Now that I have in a position to give people money to do it and bribe them, it's kind of half working. So on that, and on the notion of sort of lessons to share, what nudge actions, what small things would you say people, whether it's in academia or not in industry, could do to just move more towards this sort of either way of working and how you're doing things or way of thinking? Because I think the way that you were describing it as a way of thinking was a really nice framing.
Yeah, I think it's about focusing on your goals and the utility of what you're putting out there. So if you're, say, branching into a new field of science or doing a new type of assay that your lab hasn't really done before, maybe don't wait until you've tried and failed a bunch of times to talk to people about it. Like, maybe go on social media and post a thread about what you're trying to do and get tips from people. Like, that to me is open science, is just being open early, and you're technically publishing because you're putting it on social media. You could do that. You could you can post preprints and make versions of them. Like, I don't think people take advantage enough of the versioning capabilities of preprints. So you can put a preprint out when you've done just like one experiment in a project, let people see it, benefit from what you've learned, maybe give you feedback on if they think you're doing something wrong or you're missing an opportunity or should pursue a new direction. And then just update it, post a new version of the preprint when you've done the next part of the project. And I think there's some cool examples of people doing that where it's really helped their science and helped them get feedback and just do it openly. And there's just a lot of ways to do this. Like, it could be on the software side. If you're building a software tool and you think this could really be useful, this is better than what other people are using, I want people to adopt this, then think about what's going to make them adopt it. Make it as useful and usable as possible. Make sure other people can run it. Maybe do user testing. Have like a really nice README that explains how to install it and use it and everything. And I'll say we just had an example where we released a software tool for choosing better model organisms for testing. For many things. For us, it would be for kind of like preclinical drug screening, potentially, instead of just having to rely on a mouse, doing some like lower organism or more simple organism testing first. And we released this and described it a lot, and we had a GitHub repo associated with it, but we were getting feedback from people who were really interested in choosing a more appropriate model, but they were like totally not computational and had no idea what to do with a GitHub repo. And that's how I was in grad school. I would click on something and go, oh, it's GitHub, and I would close it. So we decided to make like a user-friendly interface for it, and we created something we call Zoogle, so people can just look up the data and search through the data from this tool instead of having to like run it themselves. So thinking about like, who is your audience? What is the impact you're trying to have? Are you trying to benefit someone else? Are you trying to learn something for yourself? And really coming up with a plan for how to share your work that accomplishes those goals, even if it doesn't fit into a traditional, do your work for a while, submit it to a journal, get it accepted kind of model.
Yeah, that is good advice. I think the making it usable is hugely underrated, but that is the secret to getting people to follow your ideas and do what you want them to do, is make it accessible for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, and I should add too, like also telling people about it. Like don't just deposit a preprint or publish a paper and like expect the world to flock to it, but let people know like, hey, I put this out here. I would love feedback on X. Leave a comment, leave a public comment so you can encourage public discussion, like we were saying before. Maybe the more discussion that is there, seeds later discussion. So yeah, getting it out there and pushing for a dialogue, I think, is important too.
While we're on feedback, one of the things I come across a lot is that you can have great leadership in place, you can have great ideas in place, but if everything below that is still very traditional and sort of set in one way of doing it, it's very, very difficult to get broader buy-in. And eLife is probably a really good example of that. eLife had for quite a long time Mike, who, like him or not, he was very vocal and he was pushing things in a certain direction. A lot of people think that was just Mike. That was eLife more broadly. eLife are still now pursuing that direction, but eLife have always had a really big problem in that they started as this big glam journal alternative with open science principles. So it was great, but it was still a glam journal. And I think, a lot of their editors are glam journal editors. And so eLife's big problem is they want to move in one direction, but their editors don't fully buy into it necessarily. And so they're in a bit of a weird situation in that. Obviously, you're doing something really different. You're able to recruit people directly into that who are the better fit for that. You're probably not going to recruit someone who says, I hate what you're doing with the publishing side of things. But do you have you learned anything from how to ease that transition or how to get that broader adoption for the things you're trying to do?
It's a good question. I mean, we haven't really been focused on that because it is just an internal thing that we're doing. And when we talk about it publicly, we're not trying to get other people to do exactly what we're doing. We're just trying to change the way that people approach things and have, small changes. I think, I don't know, I come from like a science communication background. And I think in any communication, if you're trying to relate to someone and potentially change their mind or open their mind to something else, it always comes down to relating on core values. Like, I don't think most scientists are super at odds about like what is the goal of publishing. Like we're trying to advance shared knowledge and solve really important problems in the world. And we probably all agree that we should probably be doing that as fast as we can and not waiting, because there's some urgency in the things that are happening in the world today. So I think if you can, always establish that we're really trying to all do the same thing and there's just different ideas for how to accomplish it, that can be useful. And then what we're trying to do at Arcadia is develop as much evidence as we can. So we're approaching it pretty scientifically. Like we treat it as an experiment. These are ideas, they're hypotheses. They're not, concrete facts at this point. They're things we're trying to test, and we're using our own science and people as the test subject. So we try to record as much data as we can and report out how it's going. And I think, the proof is in the pudding. Like if it doesn't work for us and it ends up being like tons and tons of work and it doesn't get us the outcomes we want, we won't keep doing it. If it continues to improve and it does seem like it's changing the way we do our science in a useful way and has a lot of side benefits too, like in hiring, like I was mentioning, or other ways, those are facts. Those are things we can support with data, and people can, take it or leave it.
Yeah, I will. It is nice that you do it in that way, and obviously all of these things are documented in pubs of their own, and I will try to link all of those in the show notes. So you've done quite a few of those now. I think I've got more, so people can read them and see the evolution of this. But it's a really nice way of doing it. There's a lot of the stuff in the open science space at the moment feels like it's more about people's opinions and ideas than actual sort of evidence or experimenting with stuff, which I'm also very against. I'm not making myself a lot of friends at the moment, which is true of my entire career so far. What we've been doing a little bit with the new version of this podcast since we came back for a break, we've been talking a lot about careers. I once again shared my story. So I think it might be nice if we could just dive into you a little bit instead of Arcadia and talk about your journey through academia now into where you are with Arcadia. And so any advice you would have for people looking to make those kind of transitions, things they could maybe do as grad students to sort of help that along. Any advice at all you would have?
Sure. So, yeah, I can kind of briefly summarize how I got here. I'll start at grad school. So I went to Berkeley for grad school, and I ended up working on CRISPR like right the second before it became a gene editing tool. And so I got to see this like really interesting transition from fundamental research to this applied tool. And then like, within a few years, we're already at clinical trials. It was pretty cool. And so around that time, I'm like finishing grad school, trying to figure out what I want to do next. And I had always edited everyone's papers in the lab, and even, like my friends' college essays. Like I'd always done that kind of thing. And I really liked communicating about science, but I didn't really want to keep doing the science myself. And so I realized maybe I should try looking for careers in this space where I'm still immersed in the science and my PhD is useful and I need to understand science, but I'm not the one doing it. I'm just talking about it and getting it out there. And so around that time, my boss was founding the Innovative Genomics Institute, or IGI, which was a partnership between UC Berkeley and UC San Francisco. And I heard they just added Davis to that as an official partner. And they were all focused on applying CRISPR and gene editing to solve problems in health and agriculture. And they needed like a communications person. And I was just really lucky to get into that role at that time. And I kind of, Jennifer, my former boss, founder of IGI, told me, you can kind of like set up this website and make the copy for the website. And I trust you to do that. And then you can kind of figure out what the role is after that. And so I had a lot of freedom. It was really, really nice. I had to do lots of stuff, but that I, was forced to do, but I could also explore. And so I had a great opportunity to just try all sorts of things. And so that's kind of my advice to people who are not necessarily in one of those roles yet, but the more you can take the opportunities you have to try stuff and figure out what you're good at and what you like, even if this is not for science communication, I think that's a good way to figure out what kind of roles might be good for you. So in my role, it's like we made phone apps and games about CRISPR. We made like a gene editing kit for high school students to be able to do this in the classroom. I ran events, dealt with like media and documentaries, podcasts, that kind of thing. Just got to try all sorts of stuff, and it was really useful. And so I say try as much as you can and then document it. Like have a portfolio website, show people what you've done, show people what you're good at, and talk to people. I guess that's my other advice. Like I think science communication careers are not discussed super often, but there are a lot of them, and there isn't just like a one-size-fits-all job title for this sort of thing. In my previous role, I was like, first I was, I don't know, I can't even remember, like communications coordinator or something. Then I was education program manager at Arcadia. Then I was lead editor. Now I'm director of publishing. Like none of these even sound all that similar, but the core skill set is just, can you communicate science effectively and in creative ways? So I think just talking to people and getting a sense of what kinds of roles are out there, what the diversity of jobs is, and what sounds the most exciting to you is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know where they've gone from Twitter X now, but the alt-ac community, I think they're on LinkedIn mostly now. They're really good, especially for anyone based in America, because it's a bunch of people trying to do basically exactly that. And they'll give you all the time you could possibly ask for to talk to them about their career paths and how they've done it as well.
Oh, cool.
And they'll give you a network if you want to. I had a couple who are based in the UK when I was looking for initially leaving academia. They put me in contact with people.
Nice. That's awesome. Like obviously the ASAP Bio community Slack, or like the pre-review community Slack. There are Slack groups out there. I know there's I think it's like the Wyoming Institute of Science Communication or something like that. Like they have a newsletter that always has job opportunities. There's like so many little groups and things like this, like you're talking about, that connect you to this broader network. So just like seeking some of them out leads you to other ones.
Yeah, it's basically how I got the job I'm in now.
I think it can be harder to do open science and to do it well. Like it takes a little bit more effort. Sometimes it can be easier to do the thing that is the norm that you're used to doing. And open science really does take like deliberate thought and planning. But I think once you get into it, it just feels better. It's nice to do it. You get used to it. At least at Arcadia, we're coming up with every day we come up with a new way to automate some step of our process, or we experiment with using LLMs to take a lab notebook and generate the first draft of a pub, or just ways to speed things up. So I don't think it has to be like a big heavy lift and an enormous effort in order to do it. I think just trying it a little bit and experimenting on your own can really lead you to figure out, similar to career searching, like figure out what you like and what you don't like and what works for you. So it takes effort and being deliberate, but ultimately I think the outcomes are better and it feels more fun to do.
I'd second that, and I think we'll leave that right there because that is the perfect place to end, actually.
Great.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's the show, folks. If you enjoyed listening, then hit that subscribe button to get the latest updates straight to wherever it is you're listening. Don't forget to rate us on Spotify or Apple and follow us on Twitter at MotionPod. You can find links to things we've just discussed on our website, preprintsandmotion.com. If you'd like to tell us what you think, then send an email, shout at us on Twitter, or shout at us if you see us walking down the street. This has been a JMJ production, generously supported by our friends at ASAP Bio. Until next time, have a good week.